You know, it's interesting. You mentioned price earnings. Rich Hartman just did an article the other day talking about the Dow hitting 10,000, and they're all giddy on Wall Street about this. But the price earnings ratios on the Standard & Poor's, as of October 7th, the ratio is 140 plus. Now, he says, remember this.
Madness, absolute madness.
He says, remember this thing.com. Remember that all the irrational exuberance was the bubble, and the PE basic fundamentals went from the 15 range and shot all the way to 47. He said, now we're looking at 140. The funny thing is, it doesn't even fit the Fed's chart. He says it's absolutely comical. There are no fundamentals, just fake money floating around created from thin air, looking for a place to land. And he notes here to the Fed, when you create the money, it needs to be dispersed. It doesn't need to be spun around the fractional reserve system of debt, creating greed whores who will cash out bonuses of false profits from stimulus flotation. Or you get what we have today, fundamentals that fall completely out of whack. Now, they're trying their best. And Bob, I know you've been seeing this. We have turned the corner. It's the new.
We're into a blind alley?
Well, well, I mean, everybody pins their tail to the donkey here on Wall Street. I mean, after all, the Dow's at 10,000. Isn't that good? Isn't that wonderful? Look, businesses, but as you said, where's the labor cost included in this? They've been whacking out inventories. They've been whacking out jobs. So, hey, I could sit here and make this network look like it's a multi-million-dollar business. I just need some creative financial ratings. That's all.
Yeah, that brings up the mark to market and the mark to model, and all those earnings that are coming out of Wall Street and banking are fictitious. And the stock market's up because the Fed has dispersed $12.7 trillion to banks in brokerage houses all over the world with instructions to use leverage, go in the market, and drive everything up. And that's exactly what they've done. The question is how high. I don't know. But I do know is I certainly wouldn't be long in that market with my money, with the exception of gold and silver shares.
You know the funny thing, Bob, I was watching a technical analysis. I think it's up on my webpage in the archives. It was a technical analysis looking at the similarities between 1929 and today. And based on his analysis, the Dow could rise to around about 10,500, but then that's where you get that precipitous fall. And I find that interesting just because CNBC has now jumped on a new mantra, and it is obviously proof, as they say, that we've turned the corner and that we have gone through September and October without a major correction, which ultimately means that the bottom is in.
It's the new low, or it's the new high. It's the new Orwellian doublespeak. We're going to say whatever we damn well want, because nothing, Bob and Robbie, is adding up. So they can make any kind of claim that they want based and hang this on whatever doppelganger is left over from something else that they covered a month ago. I don't even watch these financial shows anymore. I used to watch them because I used to watch for the crevices that were devoid of logic and how they would try to bridge these illogic gaps. I don't even do that anymore. They're beyond even redemption of even holding on to their own audiences. I've been looking at their stats. People aren't paying attention anymore. They're not even
look
watching.
At the advertising.
Yeah, I was watching Fox today. Every other commercial's a gold commercial.
Isn't that amazing?
They are gold companies.
And they're ripping the hell out of the people, charging them 30 to 60% markups.
Oh, absolutely. I'll give every listener to the show a guarantor that I don't care which company advertises on Fox News, I will beat their price by a substantial margin.
Well, you better clarify that, because if they're charging 60% premium, if you come in at 42, you'd still be beating them.
When you know you don't come in at 42, you come in less than 10.
Wait, 10?
10?
10?
Jeez. Bob.
Jeez, I'd be happy with that.
Yeah, I know.
800.
Incidentally,
hey, we got a break.
Propaganda.
We got a break. Let's see if you guys can follow this. And again, this is the gentleman, this Rich Hartman, that was talking about the price-earnings ratios. And he's speaking specifically about the financial institutions and the refinance of all their debt. And he says, let's face it, he said the refinance on all their debt at anywhere from 0.5% to 0.0015% via the government taxpayer loan bailouts, and then reloan that money out to taxpayers at 5%, or don't refinance existing taxpayers' loans from their 6 to 10%, it becomes a built-in profit that borders on criminal. Until the public realizes that the simple concept, I owe the bank money, I'm now going to take the money from the parts of my paycheck and give it to the government. So the government can loan it to the bank, I owe, at a really cheap rate. Just so that that bank I owe can make a larger profit margin on the money I still owe them. And after they make a larger profit, they can give themselves a bonus above and beyond the addition of profits they made by cutting costs through layoffs. Does that make any sense to you, Bob?
It certainly does. And the international forecast has been talking about that over and over and over again. And they're parking a lot of money with the Fed. The Fed lends them money, 0.5% or less, and then they take the money and they plant it with the Fed at 1.25% or 2%, or whatever the rate is that they're giving them. And so here they are, money made up out of thin air by the Fed, given away, essentially. And, of course, there are those now who want them, the banks and the brokerage firms and the insurance companies, not to have to pay this money back. They want a permanent bailout now. And all that burden to be carried by the American taxpayer ad infinitum. Children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren were hanging this sort of Damocles around their neck, or this millstone. And that's what we're doing to future generations. And the only way out of this thing is to default on the debt and take down the entire system. Who's going to lose the most when the system goes down? The people who got the most. And that's that 15% or 2 or 3% of the ultra rich. They're going to be the biggest losers.
You know, I want people to realize when they hear the terminology of the gap between the rich and the poor is growing ever wider, I want you to consider that for a second and understand what that really means. What that means is the middle is being taken out of this equation. What's being dropped from the scenario, gentlemen, is the middle class, which are the people that do the living, the dying, the sweating, the earning, the buying, and the dying in our communities and cities all across the country. There is hardly any middle class left. And when you hear this, I want you to keep this in mind, that the widening gap between the rich and the haves and the have-nots and the poor is growing ever wider. That means there's something dropping out of that equation, which is most of us that fall within that range they used to call the middle class, the people that really built this country. I mean, Bob, I'm even looking at their terminology now, and I find myself just sitting there shaking my head because nobody is really taking their terms and really thinking them through. You know, what are they actually saying when they come out with these terms that are repeated ad nauseum to the point that people become even numb to what they're actually saying and what the actual meaning is? There is no middle class. It is dying.
Well, an easy summation is deliberately induced pauperization.
One more time on that.
The people who are behind the scenes who are causing this deliberately in order to bring the world, and particularly Western Europe and the United States and Canada, down to its knees financially so that they'll accept world government. This didn't happen. It was planned. And that's what they're doing. What do you think free trade, globalization, offshoring, outsourcing were all about? Killing American jobs. destroying the very infrastructure of our country. It's all being done deliberately. And all of these people who are doing it have to be brought to justice and have to be hung for treason. And that's why they get so terrified when you're on, John and Robbie and other personalities on the radio and on shortwave and on the internet, and with a handful of really hardcore publications by the International Forecaster and just a handful of others. The rest of them don't have the guts to do what's right, to tell the truth in the unvarnished variety. And I wish there were thousands more who would do it, but we live in a world of people who don't understand and people who are gutless.